The night sky above Tyre 7 was no longer peaceful. The twin moons that once lit the forests with silver light were now hidden behind clouds of smoke and ash. Fires burned across the valleys, and the once beautiful cities of the Velare were nothing more than glowing ruins. The Gregorian dominion had arrived with full force, without warning, without mercy. Their warships blacked out the sun, their foot soldiers marched without fear, and their machines crushed everything in their path. In just 11 days, half the planet had fallen. Families were slaughtered. Children cried in hiding. Villagers, who once sang songs of peace, now whispered only prayers in the dark. Tyre 7, a planet known for its beauty and wisdom, was dying. No one was coming to save it. High above the broken hills, in the shattered communication tower of Miratel Peak, a Velari officer named Laurent held a transmitter in his trembling hands. His uniform was torn, his skin burned, and his voice cracked with exhaustion. But still he tried. Still he begged. "This is Tyre 7 command. To any council vessel. To any military outpost. We request immediate reinforcements. Civilian. Casualties rising. Enemy forces overwhelming. You'll not survive another rotation. Please. Please respond." Static answered him. For the third day in a row, silence was the only reply. The Galactic Council had turned away. They had deemed Tyre 7 a lost cause, not worth the risk. No strategic value, no rich minerals, no important trade routes, just a peaceful race on a distant planet, easily forgotten. Laurent lowered the transmitter, his head dropped. Around him, the last surviving soldiers of his unit looked defeated. One of them, a young scout named Remy, asked quietly, "Did they hear us?" Laurent didn't answer. He couldn't lie anymore. But in the shadows behind the console, an old technician worked silently. Her name was Yalara, and her fingers moved. With purpose, she bypassed council protocols, rerouted the signal through an ancient deep range, a ray one that hadn't been used in over a century. Then she did something no Velari had done for generations. She sent the signal to Earth. The room went cold. "You're insane," one of the officers whispered. "You can't contact them. The council forbids it." Jalara looked up, her face calm. "The council isn't here, but death is. But Earth. Earth might still be listening." Laurent stepped forward. "They're Deathworlders. They were locked out of galactic diplomacy for a reason." "Exactly," Jalara said. "Because they're dangerous. Because they're ruthless. And that's exactly what we need now." No one spoke. The room held its breath. The signal went out. A simple, short message. "This is Tyre 7. We are under full attack by Gregorian forces. We are not soldiers. We are not conquerors. We are people, please. If anyone on Earth can hear this, help us, we're dying." Then silence again. But this time it didn't last long. 3 hours later, every screen on Tyre 7 flashed black. Every comms device, every data pad, every working monitor suddenly lit up with a simple phrase, no sound. No voice, just cold, white words. "Earth has received your message." Laurent stared at the screen, heart pounding. "Is this a trick?" Another message followed. "Reinforcements inbound, do not move. Do not signal again." The screen went dark. A chill ran through the room. One of the soldiers whispered, "What? Have we done?" No one knew what to expect. Earth had not been seen in the galactic stage for nearly 70 years. Most younger Velar believed the humans had disappeared, gone silent after the council exiled them from all formal alliances. Rumors said they were still alive, building weapons in the dark, training armies on their deadly planet, preparing for the day the stars would call them back. That day had come. 19 hours later. Just before dawn, the clouds above Tyre 7 broke. Open not with sunlight but with thunder, except there was no storm. There were ships, massive black silent ships. They moved without sound, without light, without any signal or identification. Council ships were elegant, polished, diplomatic. These were monstrous floating fortresses of steel and fire, made not for peace but for one thing only: war. The Kragorians saw them first. They opened fire immediately, launching missiles and plasma rounds into the upper atmosphere. But nothing landed. Every projectile vanished before reaching the descending fleet, in the heart of the Valari Mountains. Loran stood beside Remy, watching the sky. He had seen many things in war, but never this. One of the ships came down like a shadow swallowing. The land had hovered silently, just meters above the ground. Then it opened, not with a ramp, with a gate wide and tall like the mouth of a beast. From it they emerged, not many. Just a few, 5 at first, clad in heavy armor, darker than the void, faces hidden behind masks, movements slow and exact. Each carried weapons the Valari didn't recognize, blades that crackled, rifles that hummed with restrained energy. One carried no weapon at all, just a long metal staff with strange symbols glowing across it. They didn't speak, they didn't wave. They simply walked forward toward the fires, toward the ruins, toward the enemy, Deathworlders, from Earth, here. At last, later that night, Kragorian Command received a transmission from one of their forward units. It was short, panicked, and full of static. They're here, not Council, not Standard. They're human. They're not. They're not soldiers. They're monsters. We tried to engage. Can't. They see everything. They don't stop. They silence. Command tried to respond. No reply. They checked the coordinates. That unit was gone. No signal. No trace. Just one image from a downed scout drone. A figure in black armor standing over the wreckage, head tilted. One hand holding the Kragorian banner. Then the image went black. Loran watched the flames in the distance slowly go out. The night air was quiet, too quiet. Remy stepped up beside him. Did we make the right choice? Loran didn't answer right away. Then he looked up at the stars, at the darkness where the Deathworlders had come from. We didn't call heroes, he said softly. We called monsters. Remy frowned. And why do I feel safer now? Loran stared into the night. Because sometimes monsters are the only ones who answer when no one else will. The skies above Tyra 7 had never seen anything like it. No stars, no sun, no clouds, only shadows. Giant metal shadows, silent and still, hovering just beyond the upper atmosphere. The Kragorian Dominion's fleets had ruled the air for weeks, but now they paused. Their sleek destroyers, once so proud and powerful, looked small beneath the black wall that had appeared above them. A fleet from Earth, unannounced, unmarked, unafraid. There were no greetings, no warning, no lights. The ships didn't speak. They didn't identify. They simply arrived like judgment. Down below, in the battered mountain base where the Valari survivors hid, Officer Loran stood frozen, watching the massive shapes overhead. Behind him, Remy gripped the edge of the lookout platform, his voice barely above a whisper. What are they waiting for? Loran didn't answer. No one knew what the humans were thinking. No one ever had. When Earth had been part of the Council, their actions had always been too fast, too sharp, too final. Now they had returned, and the rest of the galaxy could only watch in silence. Then, without a sound, one of the ships opened. It didn't use ramps or beams or the soft glowing tunnels most species preferred. A single black hatch slid open, and from its darkness came something worse than soldiers dashed Deathworlders. 10 of them descended in perfect formation. They moved like machines, but not slow like robots. They moved with purpose, like they had practiced this moment 1,000 times. Their armor wasn't silver or white. It wasn't elegant. It was brutal, thick, spiked and scarred. The kind of armor that wasn't made to stop bullets, was made to walk through them. Each carried different weapons. Long black rifles, pulse blades, power gauntlets, even strange tools the Valari had never seen. Some walked without speaking. Others checked terrain as if they'd already memorized every inch of it. One, taller than the others, simply stared toward the Kragorian lines, and then they vanished into the mist. No sound, just silence, and the feeling of something terrible about to happen. The Kragorians were confused. They sent scouts, drones, patrols, All vanished, not destroyed, not shot down. Gone. Entire squads disappeared without a sound.
Ow.
Only silence followed wherever the humans had passed. The Krigorian general Velrax, the Unshaken, was not a fearful being. He had crushed rebellions on 8 moons. He had vaporized cities with his own command. But when the 5th scout team vanished without trace, even he felt a shiver. His advisors recommended orbital bombardment of the landing zones. Just in case. He gave the order. Missiles flew. Explosions lit the valleys. The ground shook for miles, and still nothing, no screams, no fires, no wreckage, only darkness. Then the humans answered, but not with a voice, with action, at exactly 0200 local time. Every Krigorian forward camp went dark. Generators failed, comms blacked out. Auto-targeting systems glitched. Then came the cold, the strange, biting cold that crept into armor and choked breath from lungs. And in that darkness, they came. The humans didn't rush. They didn't charge. They walked slowly, deliberately, their glowing visors. The only light in the mist, blades hummed, plasma cracked, one by one. The enemy outposts fell. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Krigorian soldiers screamed into broken radios, begging for air support, for extraction, for mercy. No one answered. One survivor, half mad and burned, stumbled back to the Krigorian main base, dragging a broken leg behind him. His voice shook. "They don't fight like soldiers," he said. "They fight like they've already died, like they don't care what happens to them. They kill to protect, but they enjoy the hunt." His hands were shaking. We asked. For war, they brought judgment. Meanwhile, in the Valari Command Center, the mood had changed. Remy and Laurent watched the footage from orbit drone clips, night scans, thermal captures. They saw shadows moving through Krigorian lines like ghosts. Saw entire camps silenced in seconds. And then they saw one clip leaked from a damaged Krigorian. Helmet cam that shook them to the core. It showed a lone human standing in the center of a burning outpost, surrounded by enemies. Laughing, his rifle was empty, his armor cracked, and still he fought. Blade in one hand, a steel pipe in the other. He didn't back down. He advanced, and behind him, others emerged, moving in formation without fear. Laurent whispered, "That's not war. That's something else." Remy said nothing. His hands were clenched, his breath uneven. The Valari had asked for reinforcements. What they got was vengeance. By sunrise, the Krigorians had lost 7 positions. The humans hadn't used tanks, or warships, or orbital strikes. Just 10 ground soldiers, Deathworlders, tearing through the enemy like fire through dry grass. Velrax. The Unshaken called an emergency strategy meeting. "This is not acceptable," he barked. "We are the Dominion. We have firepower. Numbers, strength. They're just 10. One officer hesitated. "Sir, they're from Earth." The room went quiet. Velrax's eyes narrowed. "Earth is a myth." "Not anymore," another officer said. "What do we do?" Velrax gave the only command he could. "Send everything. All units. Hunt them down. Show them that no one defies the Dominion." But deep in his mind, a small part of him knew he wasn't hunting them. They were hunting him. The people of Tyrus 7 watched from the hills. They saw the smoke rise where enemy camps used to be. They heard rumors, whispers of black armored giants, enemies being dragged into shadows, of humans who didn't sleep, didn't hesitate, didn't stop, and somewhere in the darkness, one Deathworlder said softly, "You asked for help. You got us. Now stay out of the way." The valley that once echoed with the peaceful songs of Tyrus 7 was now silent, wrapped in tension so thick it made the air feel heavier. The Valari, once hopeful that the Galactic Council would send help, had finally seen with their own eyes what Earth's help looked like. It didn't wear medals, didn't carry banners, didn't smile. It killed with quiet precision. It moved like something ancient, like something that had been waiting for this moment for far too long. Far in the shadows of the Redstone Ridge, deep inside the rocky terrain that the Krigorian forces had claimed as their forward base, a human Deathworlder crouched low in the dirt watching. His armor, black as night and marked with strange scars, blended into the terrain like he had been born from it. His name was Vance. His eyes, behind his visor, did not blink. He didn't speak. He was listening to the pattern of enemy footfalls, the subtle hum of nearby drones, and the wind shifting just slightly, as if it too feared what he was about to do. A soft voice spoke into his ear through his target confirmed. 10 Krigorian commanders, all inside the forward tent. What? Number. Alarms, no escape routes. Go. Vance didn't reply. He didn't need to. He moved. No shout, no battle cry. Just motion swift and silent like death on a cold wind. Within 30 seconds, the Krigorian watchmen were already gone. Throats slit, blades retracted, their bodies dropped without a sound. Vance entered the command tent alone. What happened? Inside would never be known in full, only that minutes later, the entire tent exploded in a storm of blood, fire, and fragments. Not a single Krigorian officer walked out, and not a single Earth soldier had taken a hit. Back at the Valari stronghold, scouts reported the news with disbelief. The Krigorian command base has fallen. All 10 officers eliminated. No survivors, no alerts, just gone. Loran stood frozen, his mouth half open. But how? How is that even possible? Remy, standing beside him, answered without blinking. It was the humans. It had drawn first blood, and the galaxy was about to learn what that truly meant. The next morning, Krigorian forces began to panic. Their communications were broken. Leadership scattered. Their once clean formations now stumbled like animals in the dark. Their response? Brutal, counterattacks, blind, desperate, and full of rage. They sent war beasts. Massive machines designed to crush buildings and soldiers alike. They sent airstrikes to burn entire forests, hoping to flush out the humans with fire. But the Deathworlders didn't run. They waited, and when the enemy exposed themselves, Earth responded. It started with a thunderous crack across the northern valley, a sound like the sky being ripped open. That was Ash, one of the Deathworlders, a heavy weapons specialist. His job wasn't to scout, it wasn't to sneak, it was to destroy. And he did it well. He launched his portable railgun straight into the heart of a Krigorian mech, ripping through armor, circuits, and the pilot inside in one shot. The sound echoed through the mountains like a monster waking up. Then came Echo. She didn't fire a single shot. She danced. She moved through the Krigorian ranks with twin plasma daggers, slicing through armor and bone before her enemies even knew. She was near. Her face stayed calm. Her eyes never closed. She left nothing alive behind her but silence and steam. A Krigorian squad tried to flank her. She cut them all down before, even raised their rifles. And somewhere in the shadows above, her wisp tracked enemy signals, hacking their tech mid-battle. He turned their own drones against them, jammed their backup calls. He made sure they couldn't see, couldn't aim, couldn't even scream for help. The humans weren't fighting for territory. They weren't even fighting for glory. They were fighting to end it, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. One of the Krigorian lieutenants, soaked in ash and blood, sent a final report to High Command. They move too fast. They know what we'll do before we do it. Our weapons don't stop them. Our traps don't catch them. They have no fear. We don't know how to stop them. Command responded with cold logic. Earth cannot be stronger than us. Increase force, burn the valley, kill everything, including the Volari. The order was sent, but before it could be followed, the command ship itself was hit from orbit. One of Earth's black warships, silent and still for days, finally opened fire. No warheads, no bright beams. Just a single tungsten rod dropped at impossible speed, straight through the Gregorian flagship. No explosion, just instant. Silent destruction, one clean hole. The ship died in one breath. The message was clear. This is what Earth calls a warning. The Volari watched all of this from the hills, from hidden bunkers, from their last safe corners of the world. They saw the humans moving through smoke and ruin. Like spirits of vengeance, they heard no music. They saw no joy. But for the first time in weeks, they didn't feel afraid. They felt protected. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Corlan, an old Volari scholar who had once believed peace could save the galaxy, sat beside Loran and watched the sky burn. I used to think Earth was too dangerous to call, he whispered. Loran nodded. Maybe they are? Corlan turned to him. Then why don't I regret it? Loran didn't speak, because he didn't either. Back in the Gregorian ranks, chaos spread. Camps fell, reinforcements broke and ran. Some soldiers even dropped their weapons and fled into the woods, abandoning everything. A new name began to spread through their forces like poison. The Black Death, that's what they were calling the humans now. They didn't know their real names. They didn't need to, because names didn't matter. Not when the monster was already inside your base. Not when the first blood had already been drawn. Not when you were next. Smoke still hung low over the broken plains of Tyra 7, but the worst of the fire had passed. The Gregorian advance had been shattered across multiple fronts. It's not by vast armies or high-level tech, but by a handful of black-armored Deathworlders, who tore through enemy lines like shadows made of steel and fury. For the first time since the invasion began, the people of Tyra 7 dared to believe they might survive. But as the Volari survivors watched Earth's warriors up close, something became painfully clear. These weren't saviors. They were something else entirely. Something terrifying. Something the galaxy wasn't ready to understand. Inside a fortified bunker deep in the Volari highlands, Loran stood across from a human. The Deathworlders' armor had been partly removed enough to show the bare arms underneath, scarred and hardened. His face was unreadable, cold, focused, not cruel, but not soft either. He introduced himself only as Dax Holt, commander of the Earth Strike Team. No rank, no title, no greetings. We're moving to Phase 2, Holt said, tapping a holographic map on the table. We eliminate the orbital cannon nests by midnight. Then we pressure the rear flank. Your people stay. Behind, this is not your fight anymore. Loran hesitated. But it is our planet. Holt looked at him, not angry. Not dismissive, just still. Then he said one sentence that froze the entire room. We don't fight for your world. We fight because they made us angry. That silence again. Loran didn't respond. He simply nodded and stepped back. The Volari needed help. They got Earth, and Earth didn't fight wars the way anyone else did, across the ruined forests. A young Volari medic named Selin worked inside a mobile medical tent near the front. Her job was to treat the wounded Volari, humans, anyone brought in breathing. She had seen horrors before, but nothing prepared her for Earth's soldiers. They didn't react like normal soldiers. They didn't flinch. They didn't scream. Some didn't even ask for painkillers. One had a piece of metal lodged through his thigh. When Selin tried to remove it gently, the soldier pushed her hands away, grabbed a wrench from her tray, and pulled it out himself. Selin stared at him. In disbelief, he looked at her once, then said quietly, "This isn't my worst day." Later, she found that soldier sharpening his blade with a calm, almost meditative focus, while his legs still bled onto the dirt. They didn't feel pain the way others did. They didn't think about fear the way others did. They didn't break. They adapted. And that frightened her more than the Gregorians ever had. Wisp. The team's cyber warfare expert spent most of his time hidden inside a ruined signal tower on the western ridge. He was the silent one, never removed his helmet. Never. Spoke, unless necessary. But through his hands, Earth saw everything. He hacked the Krigorian command net and began predicting their attacks before they happened. Not just tactically, psychologically. He understood how they moved, how they responded to fear, how their pride would be used against them. When Remy asked how, Wisp finally spoke. You don't beat enemies with bullets. You beat them by breaking their decisions. That line haunted Remy for days, because it meant the Deathworlders weren't just warriors. They were students of war, and they didn't come to survive. They came to win. Meanwhile, a Sheriff's heavy weapons specialist was repairing his railgun outside a Valari refugee camp. Children stared at the massive man as he cleaned his weapon with slow, careful movements. One little boy stepped forward and asked, "Are you scared when you fight?" Ash didn't look up. "No. Why not?" Ash finally met the child's eyes. "Because I died a long time ago," he said calmly. "Everything since is just unfinished. Business." The child ran away, but the words stayed. Even the refugees began to fear the humans. Not because they were cruel, but because they were too calm in chaos. Too ready. Like they'd been waiting for war their whole lives. Maybe they had. That night, in the war tent, Loran asked Dax Holt the question everyone else was too afraid to ask. Why do you fight like this? Why do you kill without pause, without hesitation? Was sharpening a blade, he didn't stop. He simply answered, because we come from a world that never gave us a choice. He looked up at Loran. You come from a world of peace. We come from storms, from fire, from a planet where everything tried to kill us. Weather, animals, each other. We adapted, or we died. Loran swallowed. But doesn't that make you dangerous to everyone else? Dax didn't blink. Only to those who make the mistake of hurting what we protect. Then he stood up and walked into the night. The Valari finally understood. These humans. They didn't come to build peace. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to finish what others were too weak to end. The Krigorians had laughed when Earth's name came up in the first intercepted signal. They weren't laughing anymore. Because Earth didn't send diplomats. Earth sent Deathworlders. And Deathworlders didn't think like the rest of the galaxy. They didn't fight for glory. They didn't fight for power. They fought for one reason only. If you hurt the innocent, they will come. And when they do, they don't stop. Not until you're gone. The air over Tire 7 had changed. It was thicker, now tainted with dust, fire, and something else. Fear. Not just the kind that made soldiers hesitate. This was a deeper fear, the kind that lived in the bones, the kind that whispered, you're not going to win this. Even the Krigorian, elite cold, ruthless conquerors of over a dozen star systems began to feel it creeping in. Their warships still hovered, their ground forces still marched, but behind their orders, behind their weapons, was the sinking sense that something had gone terribly wrong, because the humans had stopped defending now. They were hunting. The Krigorians had a plan. It was ambitious, brutal, designed to break morale. They would send their 3rd Shock Division over 8,000 soldiers, backed by armor, mechs, and artillery, through the Black Glass Canyon. It was the main supply artery to the remaining Valaria resistance. If they could wipe out the refugee camps and overrun the forward hill, the Valari would be forced to surrender. Earth's small strike team wouldn't be enough to hold the line. That's what the Krigorian generals believed. They didn't know that Earth had been waiting for this. They didn't know the canyon had already been prepared. It began at 3 o'clock. Local time, scouts at the canyon entrance disappeared first. Then came the report's interference, signal loss, strange pulses in the soil. Still, the Krigorians pressed forward. Confident in their overwhelming numbers, they entered the canyon in full force, and that's when the walls came. Alive. Boom. The first explosion wasn't from a missile. It was from beneath. The very rock shattering as seismic charges placed by. Earth's combat engineers detonated with precise timing. The ground split open, swallowing an entire armored column in seconds. Mechs, tanks, and soldiers tumbled into fire and dust. Before anyone could recover Ash the Deathworlder heavy weapons. Expert opened fire from the cliffs above. His railgun didn't fire bullets. It fired death. Each round punched through 3 vehicles at once. Each shot shattered steel and bone. His visor read one word, purge, and then came the others. Echo dropped from above, her twin plasma blades, igniting midair. She didn't land softly, she landed hard, blades first, tearing through the Krigorian command squad like paper. She moved like a blur, cutting down officers before they could even raise their weapons. No war cry, no mercy. Only motion. Only death. Wisp jammed, there comes. Ghost hacked their mech targeting, and in the center of it all, Dax Holt led the charge. Not from behind, from the front. He walked straight through plasma fire, his armor scorched, his hands red with blood, carrying nothing but a shock baton and a sidearm. Krigorians rushed him. He didn't dodge, he broke them, one by one. With his fists, with his fury, it wasn't a fight, it was a slaughter. Hours later, the battlefield was still smoking. The Krigorian 3rd Shock Division no longer existed. Over 8,000 trained troops had entered the canyon. None came out. The Valari scouts who arrived after the battle didn't believe what they saw. Twisted wreckage, burned-out mechs, blackened armor. No signs of retreat, no signs of prisoners, just silence. And in the middle of it, carved into a destroyed Krigorian transport, was a single word. Enough. News of the massacre spread fast. Not through official channels, but in whispers. Even Krigorian soldiers on the outer front lines began deserting. Some surrendered to Valari scouts just to avoid the humans. Others fired on their own commanders and fled into the hills. High above the planet, aboard the Krigorian fleet flagship, Admiral Drevok stared at the reports in disbelief. "How many did they send?" he asked quietly. A trembling officer responded. "Sir, only 10 humans are on the ground."
Ah.
Drevok shook his head. "No, that's not possible." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Earth didn't need armies. Earth sent specialists, each one trained to survive the worst environments, known to life. Each one trained to kill faster than machines. Each one trained to be the last thing their enemy ever saw. This wasn't a war anymore. This was a lesson, and the galaxy had just failed the test. Back at the Valari mountain base, the survivors stood in silence as the human strike team returned. Bloodied, burned, but standing.
Ow.
No words, no cheering. They didn't celebrate, they just cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next mission. Loran approached Dax. "You turned the tide," he said. Dax didn't look up. "No, they did that to themselves." Loran frowned. "How?" Dax finally met his eyes. "They gave us a reason." The Valari Council gathered that night. Some wanted to send a message of thanks. Others wanted to warn the galaxy. But in the end, they agreed on only one thing. Calling Earth had changed everything. Not just the war, the balance of power. Now, everyone would remember what Deathworlders truly were: not diplomats, not soldiers, force incarnate, far away. In a distant galaxy, a council listening station intercepted fragments of the battle recordings. And for the first time in decades, a red alert was issued: Earth combat units active. One senior analyst leaned back in his chair and whispered, "They're awake again." We didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Everyone in the room felt the chill, because if Earth was fighting again, nothing would ever be the same. The war on Tyrus 7 was raging, but beneath the chaos, quieter battle was unfolding, one of secrets, history, and hard truths. After the massacre in Blackglass Canyon, the Valari leaders knew they needed answers. It's not just about the Earth. Deathworlders, who fought with terrifying skill, but about Earth itself, the planet that had vanished from galactic politics decades ago, spoken of only in whispers and warnings. Laran and Remy sat in a dimly lit chamber deep inside the Valari. command center. Across from them was Yalara, the old technician who had once sent the desperate signal to Earth. She had spent years researching forbidden archives and lost transmissions, piecing together fragments of Earth's forgotten past. Now, her voice was heavy with truth. Earth wasn't always like this, she began quietly. Long ago, Earth was a proud member of the Galactic Council, but the planet itself, its people, were unlike any others. They lived on a death world, a harsh, brutal place where survival meant constant struggle. Toxic air, savage predators, deadly storms. Their planet shaped them into something no one else could understand. Loran frowned. But why were they cast out? Yalara's eyes darkened, because they fought differently. They refused to play the Council's games of diplomacy and delay. Their tactics were brutal, yes, but effective. They didn't hesitate to wipe out entire worlds if it meant protecting their own. Their Deathworlder warriors were feared throughout the galaxy, so much so that the Council exiled them, fearing Earth's growing power would upset the balance. Remy shook his head, in disbelief, so they were punished for being strong. Not just strong, Jalara said. It's ruthless, unyielding. The galaxy called them barbarians, monsters. But on Earth, that ruthlessness was survival. It was how they lived, how they became the deadliest force anyone had ever seen. Loran clenched his fists, and now they've returned. To save us. Jalara shook her head slowly. To save you, maybe, but not for peace. For revenge. For warning. Earth's Deathworlders don't fight to make friends. They fight to make sure. No one dares threaten their world again. Silence filled the room. The weight of this truth was crushing. Outside, the sounds of war continued. But inside, the Valari understood the true cost of their salvation. They had called for help, and what it answered was a force shaped by pain, exile, and endless battle. In that moment, Loran realized something else. This was only the beginning. Earth's history was not just a story of war. It was a warning to the entire galaxy, because Deathworlders never forgot, and they never stopped coming back. The night on Tyra 7 was cold, but inside the war room the heat was unbearable. The Valari leaders gathered around a flickering holomap, where black dots marked the positions of the relentless Earth Deathworlders. Loran, Remy, and Yalara sat tense, watching the patterns of attack grow more calculated, more brutal. Dax Holt stood among them, his black armor scarred from countless battles, his eyes burning with a fierce calm. The first time, the Valari would see the real nature of these warriors not just as fighters, but as something beyond any known army. Dax spoke slowly, his voice low but steady. You see us as monsters because we fight without mercy. That's only half the truth. We're born from a world where mercy is a weakness. We survive by becoming the storm. He looked directly at Loran. The Deathworlders you face aren't just soldiers. We are survivors shaped by endless struggle against a planet that tries to kill us every day. We learn to adapt, to push harder, to fight smarter. We don't break. We don't hesitate, Remy asked quietly. But how do you carry such rage, such pain, without losing yourself? Dax's eyes darkened. We don't lose ourselves. We sharpen ourselves on it. The pain becomes purpose. The rage becomes discipline. When our world burned and those who betrayed us sought to destroy Earth's last survivors, we swore never to be weak again. I paused. That oath became our mission, not just to defend Earth, but to make sure no one dares to threaten the innocent again. When you called for help, you summoned that mission. The room was silent. Loran finally whispered, "So you don't fight for glory. You fight for justice?" Dax nodded. Justice or vengeance? Sometimes they are the same, Yalara added. That's why your warriors move like shadows and strike like thunder. It's not hatred. It's survival, pure and simple. Suddenly, alarms blared. The holomap showed Krogorian reinforcements moving closer. Dax straightened. No time for words. The real test is coming. We will show you what it means to face Deathworlders. Outside, the storm of war raged on, but the Valari now understood Earth's. Deathworlders were not just a force to fear, they were a force that would change the galaxy forever. The skies above Tyra 7 were dark with storm clouds. But beneath them, the final battle was about to begin. The Valari, Earth's Deathworlders, and the shattered remains of the Krigorian forces faced each other in a brutal no man's land, a place where hope clung to the thin line between survival and total destruction. The fate of the planet, and perhaps the entire sector, would be decided in the next hours. The Krigorian warlord Velrax, wounded but unbroken, stood atop a ridge overlooking the battlefield. His eyes burned with hatred and fear. His forces were dwindling. His pride was shattered. But he had one last weapon, massive orbital cannon, capable of wiping out the Valari stronghold below. Fire, he shouted. The ground shook as the cannon unleashed a devastating blast. Flames and rubble tore through the forest, crushing everything in its path. But before the dust settled, a shadow streaked across the sky. An Earth warship, black and silent. Dropped from orbit like a falling star, without hesitation, it unleashed a barrage of kinetic rods, tearing apart the orbital cannon in seconds. The mighty weapon exploded in a silent fireball, its destruction signaling the beginning of the end. On the ground, Dax Holt led the Deathworlders forward. They moved as one, calm, deadly, unstoppable. Every step was precise. Every strike was final. The Krigorians fought fiercely, but the weight of fear was upon them. They faced not just soldiers, but legends forged in pain and war. The Deathworlders tore through ranks, breaking lines, crushing resistance. Loran and Remy fought alongside the humans, their own courage rising with every battle cry. As the sun began to rise, the battlefield was silent once more. The Krigorian warlord lay defeated, his forces either dead or scattered. The Valari stood victorious, but they knew the victory had come at a great cost. Dax turned to Loran, voice low but steady. "This was never just about Tyra 7, he said. "It's a message. To the galaxy. To anyone who thinks Earth can be ignored." Loran nodded. Peace might never come easy again. Dax's eyes gleamed. No. But when Deathworlders walk the stars, peace is earned in fire. Look to the horizon where the war had ended. But a new era had just begun. Earth had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again.